Greetings, Marsh here, and welcome to episode 326 of my modded Factorio playthrough. In this episode, we are going to use Hellmod to plan out how we're going to make uranium fuel cells. Enjoy! Almost done here, and you can see that the naphtha has gone down to the point where now it's being filled up by the refineries like normal, and it's not being supplied by this system because it can keep up. And as a result, we are now filling up on fuel oil, but eventually the fuel oil will be filled up because we need naphtha in a greater number than we need the fuel oil. And by not pumping it out, it's going to start making it with this system here. And then it will start using up these oil residuals, and then we'll have to see where we're at. But the research is done, and you can see it's not related to the queue or anything because we're right here. Click, 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 click. Nothing's happening. So let's go back to the editor here, come in, and it won't let us start it, but if we shift click it, it's researched now, and it's not like there were any prerequisites. I almost wonder if we could unresearch it. Will that let us put it in now? Interesting, it does. Well, if that's the case, then we don't have to force research it. We can just let it happen naturally. Whatever that mystery prerequisite is now taken care of, because as you can see, this is the thing we're researching, plutonium synthesis. We have the prerequisites, although now I notice it has the prerequisite of the Cavorex enrichment process, but that is not even a part of this. Well, it's here. Huh. Was that not there a second ago? I swear that it wasn't. And you can kind of tell that it's a junk research because it doesn't give you anything. It's just kind of there. Shrug. It's fixed now, I guess. This is the first time that that's happened with research, so hopefully there's nothing else that's broken that we'll just leave it, and hopefully it won't break anything. My experience has been generally that research that's in the past that's broken doesn't really affect you anymore. It's only things you're trying to research that mess you up. But you see how this unlocks the RTG, which cobalt oxide and sodium cobaltate, so lots of cobalt go in there. And then that is how we make it, but we probably don't need to research that yet since we don't need it. But everything's happening pretty well here. So let's calculate what we can do with our uranium. I think it's in Angel's Power. Yeah. So first, we need to handle our uranium ore, and we have 60 per second. And now we're at the question of, do we add speed modules and make it take 6.4 machines, or do we add productivity modules and make it take 160 and a massive amount of power? Well, these numbers are pretty small, that we're putting 60 in and getting 6 back in uranium, and then 0.05 of 235, and then this might even be a rounding error. It's basically 0 of 234. And if we add productivities, we should start getting more of that output. So if we max out the productivities, what do we get? Well, definitely more. It didn't look like uranium moved, but I bet it did. It's just so small you can barely see it because these other ones are increasing. But luckily, centrifuges aren't very big, so it's not that difficult to create a ton of them. And since this is probably going to be a significant limiting factor for our ability to launch rockets, at least launch satellites, we probably want to get as much of the good stuff as we can. So the uranium-234 isn't used for much, basically for fuel, so that's something we'll want to process. And the number is a little weird, but it looks like it's because it's linking to the 238. And we actually want it to link to the 234. So we'll hit Control and click on it to make that the thing we're attached to. And it'll actually create a little bit more in fuel cells. And we can test this by removing the productivities and see if our fuel cells change. Whoops, it moved over there, but it does. So it's a rounding error, but certainly adding these productivities, why does it do that? Will basically double the amount of fuel cells we get out of this. So it's totally worth it. And then we will have the 235, which we can use as well. But if you look at these processes, this would get it started, but we don't really need to worry about that. That the main way of making plutonium, the cheaty way, just transforming it from 238, we only need the uranium-238. So technically, any of the 235 that we have, we could also turn into fuel cells. But we have some power, so let's see what our 234 will give us for power. And it looks like we're going to have to do this manually, but it is possible. Using Helmod here to figure out a power setup. You just have to kind of be careful about how you do it. So the first thing we want to do is burn the fuel. And we have our 3 reactor types, but it's burned in the uranium reactor. And you can see the fuel is down there as uranium-234. Click that twice. But if we select the reactor, we can change what it burns. So it can burn the 235, the 234, or the plutonium. And then there's something else here that's rather important. It's the neighbor bonus. And it gives us a few options. Some of them are pretty obvious. 1, 2, and 4. But what does 8 mean? I will show you. Since I don't want to actually throw reactors down, let's just pretend that these are the reactors. And this also works with the heat source burners as well. So when you have 1, it's just that it gets no neighbor bonus. When you have 2, they each get a neighbor bonus of 1. And then in Helmod, it says you can have 4 nuclear reactors. They're talking about the traditional square of reactors, where each reactor now has a bonus of 2. So what do they mean by 8? It's not an 8 by 8, but rather a 4 by 2, like this. And kind of the reason for that is it can be difficult to get the heat out of reactors that are this close together because they're so dense and the turbines are so large by comparison that any bigger than this, you're going to have a lot of difficulty getting the heat out. And you can actually see this to an extent with this setup here. If it was running at full blast, you notice that these burner heat sources here rarely are going that strong, that the ones in the middle don't run very often. Just because they have difficulty getting their heat so far away from where they start. And luckily, the higher tier of heat pipes do help because the temperature limit is higher. So that does help make your reactor setups larger than you could in vanilla. But only to an extent that the same limitations exist. So that is why Helmod says that. And it's calculating it based on the average neighbor bonus. So in a setup like this, the ones on the outside have a neighbor bonus of 2. So this guy has these as a neighbor, this has these, and the same here. While the 4 in the middle have a neighbor bonus of 3, like this one right here is connected to these. So if half of them have a neighbor bonus of 3 and half of them have a neighbor bonus of 2, then the average is 2.5. And our research is almost done. Almost done. There we go. So we can link this to our input because we know exactly how many fuel cells we have. And this is telling us we're going to need 2 reactors to use up those fuel cells. So clearly going any higher than that isn't necessary, but you want to look at the heat output. That running 2 of these reactors would give us a 99 megajoules per second, or basically 99 megawatts of output. But they would actually be 2 of them. Keeps moving. Which doubles it because they have a neighbor bonus of 100% per neighbor with this tier. So in practice, we would actually get our 198, which is actually a lot less than I was expecting. But this is the byproduct fuel, so the actual fuel is going to be a lot higher. And then if we had, theoretically, a neighbor bonus of 4, please stop doing that. I don't know why. I wonder if I have to restart the game or something to stop it from spawning on the side there. I almost want to because it's really annoying. Wow, that's so bad. You can see how we got another 100% because now the neighbor bonus is 2 for everybody. But if we go to 8, it only gives us that 50 because it's only increasing the neighbor bonus by 50% because not all reactors can touch 3 reactors. Only half of them can. So if you want to do any setup that's any more complicated than this, you'll basically have to calculate it yourself by doing 1 reactor and then just calculating the neighbor bonus and figuring out what the heat would be. But research is done, and I am going to restart the game, and hopefully it stops moving the window over every time you click on it. So I'll be back in a second. Alright, I'm back again. Now, this should be fixed. See, it works fine. I can click on it, and we're good. So, based on our input of 60 uranium ore, and we are linking to the 234 properly, so there's no output of 234, so we are using it, that if we used it constantly, we would need 2 uranium reactors, which means, don't really have to think about it, it would be a neighbor bonus of 2. And I guess we could put 2 more in there if we really want to, but the neighbor bonus only applies when the reactors are actually on. It would give us a burst capacity if we had more reactors than we needed. But if we were using them all the time and didn't have enough reactors, then we would have the issue of potentially the 2 corner reactors are the one that pick up the fuel. And then they will have a neighbor bonus of 0. So you probably want to have the exact number of reactors for what you want to do, which means we need about the 2. So now we can come back here, because now we need to handle all of this 235, which is in much larger quantities. So we'll do that. Also hold control and link to it. And we have no output anymore, so we know the number's good. And also you can see as far as the power output, we get way, way, way more of those cells because we just generally get more because of the numbers. Even though 234 is a very efficient fuel and makes a lot of cells, we just get them so rarely that it almost never matters. And actually, we were doing those calculations, but we could have put productivities in here. So instead of 0.07, we would have had 0.14. That's actually a big difference, because now we need 4 reactors. Please don't tell me it's doing that again. Okay. Now that we need 4 reactors, we can change that. And now we're looking at 600 megawatts. That's a lot better. I don't know. That would really be enough to power a factory, especially with the module changes. Probably not, because we're using about 600 right now. But that is certainly not nothing when you consider that uranium-234 is essentially a byproduct. And all of this is basically done on more or less 1 centrifuge, so it's quite efficient. It's weird how it's doing that. I don't understand. Isn't it supposed to, like, memorize the window position? Well, it's sticking now. I guess I'll have to open something else to see. Very interestingly, we cannot use the productivities on the uranium-235, but we can use them on the 234s. I don't know why that is. Must be for balance reason, because I imagine you would have so much power from this if you could, so we'll just assume that's how it is for a reason. And we can put speed and pollution cleaning in there to make it take up nothing. So now we're back, and we have our other fuel cell. But it looks like it's not going to link again, so we're going to have to create our own power block. So we come in here, pick another reactor, tell it the correct fuel, which this time is the 235 fuel, and we'll figure out the reactors part in a minute because we have to link it. The power of nuclear. That to fully utilize 2 belts, or those 60 uranium ore, we would need 46 reactors. And the 46 reactors would create 2.6 megawatts with no neighbor bonus at all. But of course we would have a neighbor bonus if we did the set of 4. Why is it doing that? I don't know. That makes using Hell mod much more triggering when it keeps moving the window. That we would have 7.6 gigawatts, and that's way more than the factory would ever need. So the question is... What? So it does it the first time and now it doesn't? Is it when you close the window and open it up that it confuses? What? I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, if we use the standard 2x2 or the cube of 4, we would get 7.6 gigawatts. I have nothing to say. It makes no sense. Why? Why, video game? We would get a little bit more, but potentially have issues with transferring the heat. So we should probably just do cubes. And adding this all together, it would give us 8.2 gigawatts of power. Pretty good. And it's so dark. I guess the batteries are out. Is this not a charge pad? No power. But it has power there. What? Huh? What is going on today? There's so many bugs. I didn't change anything. I didn't even update the mods or anything. Why is all this stuff broken now? What is going on with this factory? Wait. So why don't we have night vision, though? We should have radar night vision, too. Is that because the night vision in the power armor isn't working anymore? I thought it just gave it to you all the time. I guess I'll be back. I have more stuff to diagnose. Alright, I'm back. I didn't fix anything, but do you want to see something weird? Let's fly over here. Why are we flying over here? Don't think about that. We're flying over here. There so happens to be a charge pad here. And now it works. Why does this charge pad work and the other one not? I don't know. Let's go back and check the other charge pad. We have arrived back at the cursed charge pad. The cursed charge pad now works again. I wonder if radar night vision works. Radar night vision works. I guess we can check to see if we actually need night vision to make radar night vision work. We do. So at least that much is explained. So you might be asking, how exactly did I figure that out? Well, I was just going to fly over there, and before I was recording, of course, should have been recording all the time, it just started working and I hadn't even made it to the pad yet. I was like flying through here and it's just night vision turned on. I'm like, huh? And then the charge pad worked. So what a cursed episode, or a series of episodes depending on how long it becomes. Man, of course, the one episode where I decide to, hey, let's talk about nuclear and actually start planning it, and everything has to break. Of course. Is Hellbot still mad? Is it gonna like move the window and not remember? Well, it remembered it that time. If I click on it enough times, it won't remember anymore. Anyway, like I was saying, we're gonna have 8.2 gigawatts of power out of this if everything runs, but most of it, the lion's share of it, is actually coming from the 235, only a little bit from 234. And since we're here, we should probably convert this heat into an actual setup. And if we click on steam heat, it gives us nothing. So we need to do this kind of manually, but you just have to think, what do we want to use that heat on? Well, we want to make steam, and I believe we are on the blue tier of machines, not the purple ones. We can change this to the heat exchanger right there, which then makes it so it properly links. And we would need 55 of them and a ton of water. And can we link this steam properly? It doesn't look like it, so we will have to do it manually again. And now what we want to do is create electricity from steam, and we would do that with a steam turbine. So we get in there, put it at the bottom, but the steam is the wrong temperature. So we have to come in here and select the current temperature of steam we can make. And now we've got the lightning bolt because we're making power, and you see it's 594 and 594, so you would only need to do this just to figure out how big the setup would be. And we'll probably want to do that because we're going to want to have some kind of pattern of reactors. And these reactors will create the same amount of power. They all consume and generate 54 megawatts. So the size of the fuel cells only affects how often they need to be filled. So we'll definitely want to build a repeatable setup for reactors. But at the same time, we're probably not there quite yet because we don't actually need to build them because we still have some residuals, but that does give you an idea. So I'm going to pull these out for now because eventually we're going to want to make our own repeatable pattern and have all of these reactors somewhere. Well, let's do some more calculations here because now we are going to have used up fuel cells. So we need to figure out what it's going to take to process these. And we have our two methods, but of course the one we want to use is the one that will lead us to plutonium. So we'll use the advanced version. Link it to input. And that's the hydrofluoric acid which we'll have and can't use productivities. So we'll use some speeds, and that last speed module does help to get this down to 2 machines. That will give us some 238, which increases the output, but also gives us the neptunium. And we have this fluoric wastewater, which we can just calculate later. In fact, that number looks so low, I'm almost certain that's a single plant. So we process the neptunium into the plutonium. Can't use productivities. Doesn't need speeds. So we'll just put the standard complement in there. And that gives us our plutonium. So you can see that running this whole process in the realistic way, and we'll get 0.07 of the 239 per second. And we did calculate that we needed 200,000 of these. So we can figure out exactly how long it would take to make everything we need to win the game if we were running this full tilt. So the total amount that we need is 200,000, and we are making them at the rate of 0.07 per second, which means we need that in seconds. So divided by 60 to give us minutes, so we need 47,000 minutes, and then the same for hours. 793 hours. I'm thinking that's too many. But we have our uranium-238, which we can process to make more plutonium. And we do also have other uses of the 238. We can make uranium ammo by just taking the 238 and mixing it with a copper to make the projectile, and add cordite and the casing to make the bullet and put those in magazines. So we'll probably want these because these are way better than the standard ones. So we certainly want some of the 238 for the purposes of ammo. But for this, let's just assume that we are processing all of it, because that would be the worst / best case scenario for this, is that all of it is going into plutonium. So we hit our output, and of the things we can use it on, we will want to toss it into the enrichment process, link it to the input, and it doesn't seem to be linking. I wonder if it's just confused because the input and the output is the same. That is odd. Well, we might just need to type it in manually then and not have it linked, where it's 10.68. And it looks like that is correct because it's not showing it as an output, and if we come back here, it also seems to be. And when we do this, we can use productivities, so we should. And oh my goodness. I hear people whispering that beacons exist, and to them I say, not today. Maybe I will do it, I don't know. It's probably not going to be that big. It looks like a lot, but these machines aren't that big, and our factory is quite big. We'll have to see what it actually looks like, and whether or not beacons would be relevant. I know a lot of people want to see the beacon, so maybe I should be more receptive to showing one build that uses them. I suppose if it's going to be anything, a nuclear build would be a good build to do that on. But if we come back here, suddenly we are now getting the 7.19 a second of the plutonium, which is a much more reasonable number when it comes to our 200,000 that we would need to make. Because dividing that by our output gives us the number of seconds we would need, and the number of minutes, and the number of hours. So, about 8 hours, assuming this thing was actually running at full blast. So that's less bad than I thought it would be. But, based on this output of 8.2 megawatts, I really don't see the need to be turning those plutoniums into fuel cells, because this seems to be pretty good. And that's the end of this episode. On the next one, we are going to talk about how to build a setup with beacons, and then we are going to build and test our uranium fuel cell setup. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.